You're listening to The Hurt Locker, the podcast that opens the door on men's mental health. And tonight we have author Maike Mullenders. Maike, welcome to The Hurt Locker.
Thank you for having me.
First things first, what attracted you to coming onto The Hurt Locker?
Well, funnily enough, it was actually Tim who approached me. But after that, I have listened to quite a lot of episodes.
Okay.
And
Oh gosh, I'm cringing now.
No, I think it's so important to talk about men's mental health specifically. And I guess from a personal perspective, that's because when I was 21, I lost my dad to suicide. And that is now 30 years ago. So it's a long time ago and things have changed. But I still think there is such a stigma around struggling with your mental health, actually, whether you're male or female. And certainly there's still a real stigma around trying to get support, and there's certainly a stigma around suicide. And certainly throughout my trying to cope with all that, I felt so incredibly isolated. And I think that's why I come on here, in the hope to sort of let people know they're not alone, and that it's possible to go through extreme mental distress and pain and still find a way forward, I guess, and still have a good life.
Maike, you've just blown up by just saying, in terms of your Hurt Locker, you lost your dad to suicide 30 years ago. Take me back before then. What was life like for you? What were the breadcrumbs? If you, hindsight is a smug bugger, as they say, you know, and you say, but of course, but what was life like for you growing up with your dad at that time?
So we moved from the Netherlands to England when I was 5, and we moved to Leeds. And my mum started studying and working. I went to school, and my dad didn't work at all. He never felt confident in his English, so he was really isolated. But he was always at home. So when I would come home from school, he would be there, or he would pick me up. So we had a really close relationship. And he was much older than my mum. He was 25 years older than my mum. So he was occasionally mistaken for my granddad, which we would both find really entertaining. But yeah, we were really close. I was a real daddy's girl. And I think because he didn't work and because he didn't really have much in the way of connection, my relationship with him was really important. And we, you know, certainly the older I got, we would talk a lot. But in terms of you're sort of saying the breadcrumbs of when was there clarity. So when I was 11, I was called into the living room of the flat we were living in, and my dad actually told me that he was going to take his own life. And he said that life was too much for him. And of course, if you hear that as an adult is one thing. As a child, it sounds ridiculous every time I say it, but I just accepted it. I didn't question it. I really loved my dad, and I thought, if that's what he's going to do, I didn't even really think it through properly. Anyway, so I guess that wasn't really a breadcrumb. That was a big loaf of bread in terms of going, this is a man struggling.
Can I ask, when he said he was going to end his life, As an 11-year-old, I know you've used the word just accept it because it's the parents, adults, it's the parent, the adults. They know best, as it were. You're there to be cared for, to be nurtured. But where did you turn to? What did you say? Did you tell your mum?
Well, so my mum was in the room when that happened,
Okay.
and I hugged him, and I remember very clearly that it felt so strange because I was hugging him, thinking how strange that this might be the very last time. And it felt like he was more interested in what was going on in what my mum's reaction was. And so their relationship was incredibly complex. And I guess in many ways, I was just somehow always in the middle of that. I also think it's really important to make the distinction that an 11-year-old now and an 11-year-old 30 years ago are really different things. I
Are you
think
talking because of the exposure of social media and what's on TV, etc., etc.?
totally, I think they're a lot more savvy than I ever was. And yeah, I think also because both my parents were saying this. I had also had the earlier experience, maybe a couple of years before, of my cousin taking his own life. So I don't know. The only way that I can explain it is that also because my dad said this is what you do when life is too difficult, that I almost took that as a truth. So yeah, I mean, luckily at that point it didn't work, and he then tried again when I was 18. So all the time I knew, he was someone whose mood sort of was heavy in the house. You knew if he was in a good mood because you'd come home and he'd have on some, I don't know, Ella Fitzgerald singing Cole Porter, or you'd come home and he'd have some real classical dirge on, and you would know that he was unhappy.
Something like Wagner or something else. Yeah, Wagner.
Absolutely. And so that would just hang in the air. He always tried to write. It's funny, but I think he would love LinkedIn because he would just love being able to put a little ditty out there and see what people thought. But yeah, he had no success as a writer, and I think I can't imagine, if I think how I feel sometimes, how sad I feel, and then I reach out to people. I can't imagine if you feel like that and you've got no one to reach out to. And also, he more than anyone was so isolated being in England.
Did he drink?
No, well, not no, but he didn't drink excessively. We never had alcohol in the house, really. He'd occasionally go to the pub. No, he didn't.
I think you spoke about your close relationship with him and that, and I think it must have been. I'm imagining for you there must have been a sense of, from the ages of 11 to 18, a sense of heightened vigilancy as well, every day on a daily basis.
Without a doubt. And I do remember when I was younger, I'd occasionally wake up and he'd be sat on a chair next to my bed, and you could tell he'd been crying, or there was definitely a sense of responsibility. And I think, I didn't have a teenage rebellion. I held myself in really
That must have been exhausting when your peers were doing whatever peers do,
Yeah.
at 17, 18.
I think it was exhausting, but I don't think I realized until I didn't have to do it anymore because it just became my normal. Um, but absolutely what you're saying about that hypervigilance, I almost became the parent.
Yes.
And he had to be put first, and that was also kind of, although very much unspoken, behavior that my mum mirrored to me as well.
Okay.
Um,
But there's a couple of things that are coming up for me because from the ages of 11, it's like your childhood has been snatched away from you. You become an adult and then eventually the parent, as it were. But at the same time, you're trying to marry this with your mum studying, your mum working, your mum going along a different track, but your dad's at home
mm,
alone with you struggling.
yeah, and we did used to talk a lot. We talked about life and what life was about. He was an avid reader. Um, But yeah, it was certainly really heavy. I think the other thing that I have, and I think it was kind of a coping strategy at the time, is that I think I disassociated a lot. So I had this kind of split between home and school. And um, when I went to secondary school, then I think I must have been 12. I went to this amazing school where they did a lot of theatre arts, and that it really saved me, because I just loved it, and I got to go to school earlier, I got to spend more time at school, um, and I guess that's when I became a teenager was when my relationship with my dad started to shift, because I I wanted other stuff for myself,
Okay.
um, and and when he then did make that second attempt, I was really cross because he'd promised me he wouldn't do that again. And yeah, I guess at that point I started to realize that it wasn't my responsibility, and I couldn't help him. And he was also incredibly resistant to getting professional help. So
That must have been so difficult for you at 18.
I think I just cut off. I just at the So at that point where he made that second attempt, that point my parents also separated. Um, so at that point it became easier to distance myself from him.
How did that feel for you? I know it's out of sight, out of mind, but emotionally, psychologically, how was that for you? Was there a sense of abandoning him?
There was, but I also think at that point I'd gone through so much, and I'd given him so much. Um, That I also think we're talking about it 30 years on, and, like,
Yes.
it's like, I don't think it was that conscious in a way. It was just it started to happen, and as you say, it became easier because I didn't see him every day. Um, and actually, at that point, it was my mum who was trying to encourage me to have contact with him, but I just found it so heavy. Um to because I never knew what I was gonna get.
What did
Um,
you want? What did you want as opposed to what did you receive?
um, gosh, I think I would have just liked to have a dad who, I mean, it's hard, isn't it? It's so complex, because I was going to say I would have liked to have a dad who I could laugh with and joke with, and just who was encouraging. But the thing is, in many ways, he was incredibly encouraging. So he would, there wasn't much money in the house, but he would always, every 2-3 years, manage to take me to London, and we'd go and watch some theatre shows. And he knew that was
Your
what I
passion.
really wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just this massive contradiction.
It's interesting. It's interesting because as you were talking about joining secondary school and throwing yourself into drama, I was thinking about psychodrama and being able to play out particular roles. And I'm wondering whether or not, did you confide in your peers, your schoolmates, about some of the challenges that you were facing at home?
Not at all. Not at all. And I had a very, well, I'd say I had a best friend from the age of 5 who lived across the road from us. And I didn't even confide in her. I didn't confide in anyone. It felt, I guess it was also that thing of, the real thing of, we've got to keep up appearances. That was sort of the unspoken message from my parents.
Do you think there was
Yeah,
an element of shame and stigma associated with it as well?
possibly, and also maybe just a helplessness. I think my dad was really frightened of what it might look like to get help. And obviously, when something like this happens, you then get the stories from years ago. And so when he did take his own life, then friends got in touch and sort of said, yeah, I always knew there was a struggle. Or so, yeah. It's
So without being insensitive, the next 3 years from 18 to 21, how was it for you? You'd broken free from the shackles, as it were. How often would you see your father?
well, so then I went to university in Manchester.
Okay.
So I would then maybe see him, I don't know, every 3-4 months. And then my mum moved back to the Netherlands. So then I started seeing him even less. I would always talk to him on the phone. I would send him a letter, but it was almost like, this is going to sound really, really harsh, but it was almost like a kind of tick box exercise. Like, I've checked in with you. Now I can just go back to my life.
You say tick box, but don't you think there was an element of self-preservation looking back?
Oh, absolutely, there was. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally see that. I just think, yeah, for anyone listening, they might think that sounds really, really harsh. But
It feels, for me, I'm just imagining you in uni. Did your dad still remain in Leeds in England?
he did, yeah.
Okay, so you're the closest blood relation to him,
Yeah.
and there's that sense of abandonment as well. You're alone trying to manage this human being, your father, who you do love. but you're not equipped. You don't have the skills.
Yeah, yeah, you're totally right. And I think the thing is, what shifted for me when he made that second attempt when I was 18 was that I really felt like he was abandoning me. And so at that point, I was just so cross. And of course, he wasn't abandoning me. He was trying to get away from the immense pain that he was feeling. But
From himself.
yeah, totally. But yeah, that's where something shifted for me, and I absolutely had a sense of if I want to do something with my life, if I want to live free of this, then I'm going to have to be harsh.
You say be harsh, but I'll say it again: self-preservation.
I do remember going back to visit him once, and he was in a real mess emotionally. He was really upset and distressed, and I remember trying to call somebody to help him. And it was again back in the days when there was the yellow pages, and so I'm like going through the front few pages in the yellow pages or the phone directory where there's some helplines, and I remember ringing one for him, and they just were saying, "But how are you? How are you?" And I literally said, "It doesn't matter how I am. Can you just help him?" And in the end, they wouldn't talk to me. So because they just wanted to talk about me. And so I just put the phone down. Yeah.
And so, again, without being insensitive, take us up to the point when your dad did die by suicide. Were you still in university at the time?
I was. Yeah, it was the summer holiday in between my second and third year. And I'd not been able to contact him for a few days, sort of, and it was just getting longer and longer. And I didn't feel comfortable about it. Sort of, I always had that sense, I was saying before about the check-in. Okay, he's there, he's okay. And so I phoned up, and then the phone was answered, but it wasn't him. It was the police, and they then told me over the phone that he'd taken his own life.
Can I ask, what was your initial reaction?
Just sadness, I think, and also just a sense of, okay, well, it's happened then. I think it was that possibility then had haunted me since I was 11, and here it was. It had played itself out. But then very quickly, because I was his only relative in England, I then had to, on the same day, I had to go to Leeds. I had to identify his body. I had to speak to the police, and then I guess I very much fell back into that little girl role of just wanting to do the right thing. So I don't think I felt anything really at that point. And I do remember coming home that evening from going to Leeds, and I just started to shake. like really, really violently shake, and just thinking, wow, am I going to be shaking like this forever? It was such a sort of visceral reaction, and obviously it was just a reaction to the trauma of it all. But yeah.
When you did receive that phone call from the police and you spoke about reaction, often when loved ones care for somebody who's attempted on multiple occasions, often there's an ambivalence in terms of a relief that it's occurred. Though society doesn't see it as normal for it to be a relief, but there must have been a sense of, well, I haven't got this hanging over me anymore.
I think because it kind of got more complicated when I went to identify his body, because at that point the police then gave me a confession that he'd written addressed to them, saying that he'd been inappropriate with me. I don't think I felt anything for such a long time. I just think I was in absolute shock. But I totally agree that, yeah, eventually there was a sense of relief that I didn't need to live with that hanging over me. I wasn't waiting for the phone call to happen, because the phone call had happened. But I just think for such a long time, I don't think I was living. I was just going through the motions of being in my own body. If that makes sense. I don't know.
It does make sense, but you've just opened up the Hurt Locker more, because in the confession you've spoken about, he confesses his inappropriateness with you. I'm guessing this is something that you'd never shared or disclosed with anybody.
It's something that I have no memory of. So that then became another thing in its own right, in a way. So at that point, about to go into my third year at drama college, which is a year of back-to-back productions, and it's kind of your first opportunity to perform to industry professionals. So it's really important, and it's kind of what all my university, what just everything has been building up to, and it's my thing, if that makes sense.
Yes.
It's something that I had for myself. And so, sorry, I've lost my trail of thought.
You're talking about going into the third year. It's the opportunity now to showcase your skills, your talents to the industry professionals. But
so I kind of, I just put everything on the back burner, in a way. I was just like, I was cross. If I could have said anything to him, I would have said, "You're not ruining this for me. This is, this is my opportunity." And so I sort of just went headlong into that. Again, I think 30 years ago as well, it was a really different time in terms of there wasn't really any support for me from the university. And so I think the one concession that I specifically asked for was that I was due to have a lead role in the first production back in the September, and he died at the end of August. And I just said, please, can I just have a small role in the first show, because I can't carry this. but this is when I think the whole stigma around suicide comes in, because obviously, you know, I was in a group of also just very young people who probably hadn't even experienced bereavement before. And so no one knew what to say to me. And I
Interesting.
just felt more and more isolated. And I wasn't, you know, prior to this happening, I wasn't the most secure and confident person anyway. But this really didn't help. And I remember one of my fellow students, I think about halfway through our third year, her dad passed away to cancer. And I remember seeing, and maybe this was me, but maybe, you know, I read it wrong, but I just remember seeing the response to her. There was just a lot of sympathy and empathy. And it was almost like, yeah, it felt to me like cancer was an acceptable death, but suicide was too complicated. And I, you know, I can't blame them for that response, because it is really complicated and complex.
It is, but as you know now, and we'll talk about your work with SOBS, etc., in a bit, but with suicide, we need to normalize the fact that it does happen, but we equally need to normalize the fact that there is help and support out there as well. And it's interesting you using cancer, because I can still remember the days 30, 40 years ago whereby they used to mouth the word cancer as if it was contagious,
Yeah.
you know? And so it's interesting that your friend who lost their father to cancer, that they got that outpouring of support, and yet, once again, you're isolated, you're abandoned.
I was saying this the other day in a meeting, you know, in the same way that you've got the Heart Foundation, cancer research, all these charity shops. It's like I'm working for the day that you've got a suicide prevention shop on every high street, you know,
Absolutely.
so that actually young children are going, what is
Suicide,
suicide? And
definitely.
that you then explain it to a young child, but then you equally explain there are so many other ways of dealing with mental distress, but so that you start having those conversations.
How did you
Yeah.
manage to get through your third year? Did you get through your third year?
I did get through my third year. I got my degree. But yeah, I didn't get through it in the way that I would have liked. I was very disconnected, and I think what I learned when I went to university, and I already learned this in my first year, part of what acting is drawing on your own emotional experiences. And what I realized early on is that I was not in any space to sort of draw on my own emotions, because my own emotions were so shut off because they were too big.
Yeah.
That I really struggled to make emotional connections when I was playing parts. So yeah, I did get through my third year. I got an agent at the end of it. And I started, I was still in Manchester, so I started doing bits for Granada, bits for Yorkshire Television. But as I had more time and space, because I wasn't sort of full-time in university, that's when I really started to question more about the confession. Was that true? Why would he write it if it wasn't true? And yeah, so that's when I went into therapy for the second time. So I was already in therapy when my dad passed away, trying to deal with my insecurity, my lack of self-worth, all those sort of things. But actually, sorry.
No, go on. I'm just interested to know your insecurities, your self-worth. And I'm wondering, as a child, sorry to go back, but was there a subconscious part of you that felt as if, like, perhaps if I'd been a better daughter, etc., my father wouldn't have attempted? Was that going on in the psyche, or?
I think absolutely, on an unconscious level, absolutely. And I very much fell into very perfectionistic behavior, and sort of also just very organized, trying to control absolutely everything. It became a bit of a sort of funny thing that my flatmates would occasionally do, that they'd move something in my room and then they'd wait and see. It was mean, but it was quite
No,
funny.
naughty. I'm laughing, but that's naughty as well.
Just to sort of see how long it'd take me to
Yeah.
bump. Yeah.
But part of that is, I'm guessing, you seeking approval and validation from your dad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't want anything that I did to be the thing that would tip him over the edge, so to speak. Actually, that's a really poor turn of phrase, but
No,
yeah.
no, no.
But,
No, it's not. It's okay.
but yeah, I didn't want to be the one. So it was like, even as a kid, it was constantly walking on eggshells,
Yes.
trying to, I wasn't the most academic child. When we moved to England, I didn't speak any English, so I really struggled at first with the language, with English. And so I wasn't the most academic, and I always felt like I was a disappointment to him, that he would have,
Really?
liked it to be better.
How long did you carry that for? Are you,
Well,
are you still carrying it?
I know that I did my best now. So but yeah, it still hurts. It's still, you said earlier, what would you have liked your dad to be like? And I think I would have just liked him to love me for exactly who I was, and to see the bits of me that are just me, that are who I am, rather than the things he wanted me to be. And he wanted me to be confident and gregarious and
Everything that he wasn't.
well, absolutely. But I think maybe that was part of it as well, that he was trying for me to, clearly he carried so much sadness, that maybe he wanted me to. And I get that, I'm a parent now, and
You don't live vicariously through your children, do you?
I
Come on.
might do occasionally. But I wanted all of them to go to dance lessons, because it had meant so much to me. They all did it for about a term and went, nah, it's not
It's not for
for
me.
me, Mum. But
Absolutely.
so I understand it, but I certainly, yeah, I I've never judged them for not, sorry, I just realized I need to plug in. I've never judged them for not becoming dancers, you know. They are their own people, and you know.
Can I ask, we know that when people have been bereaved and are affected by suicide, that they join a high-risk category group themselves of between 80 and 300%, higher than the general population to die by suicide. You wouldn't have known these facts yourself, but did you ever felt suicidal? I'll just ask directly.
Yeah, so when I was 18, no, not 18, younger, must have been 16 or 17, I did actually make an attempt on my own life. And
Okay.
it's so silly when I look back on it now, because
It's not silly.
well, it was for silly reasons. You know, I was
It was for a reason. Come on, you're going to say you were in a relationship?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. No, that's your world.
yeah, absolutely. And certainly, so school was my saving space, and this relationship was also my safe space. We were in a relationship for 4 or 5 years, and yeah, and I felt that he was losing interest, or that someone else might be more appealing, and yeah, it was not, you know, if I think about it now, if that had worked, if I think what I would have missed, you know, it's really sad.
Were you hospitalized? Was anybody aware that you've attempted?
No one was aware. So I literally woke up the next day and went, oh, and I went to school, and I didn't tell my parents. But I guess, you know, that's when my dad's sort of words echoed in my head, you know, and it was pure copied behavior. You know, when life gets too much for you, this is what you do.
Can I ask, did you ever talk to your dad about suicide from your perspective?
I can't remember. I really can't remember. I mean, I know that after the first attempt, I said to him, "You can't do that again."
No, I mean, if you'd ever put it in a position whereby it would have been okay for you to die by suicide?
Oh gosh, I don't think it would have been okay for
No,
him if,
no, I know, and that's what I mean about having the conversation, the
yeah,
impact on him.
yeah. It's interesting that you sort of say that about, you know, people, and I did know that you're more vulnerable yourself. And I think up to the point of having children, it was always in my head as a possibility. It sounds again really strange, but it almost became something that made me feel safe.
Yeah, a
You
safety net.
know, that however, you know, if I really, really messed up, or if things got really horrible or really bad, then that was an option. And then at the point when I had children, that was really hard, that wasn't an option anymore.
Tell me
Um,
why. Tell me why.
well, because I,
It snatched it away from you.
yeah, I couldn't do that to them.
So you've got children. How many children? If you don't
3.
mind me asking? 3.
Yeah. I've got 19-year-old twins and a 12-year-old. So yeah.
You've got no choice in the game now.
No. And I wouldn't want it, you know. I wouldn't want the choice, but at the time that was really real, that they took that away from me, which is, you know, is a really good thing.
It's a protective factor.
Yeah, but it's also, it means that I have to sit in my struggles or in my pain in a different way.
How is your pain nowadays?
It's really much better. It's interesting. So I wrote the book 2 years ago about my experience, and actually what I'm aware of is that I'm obviously talking about it much more
And
since
and the
then.
book's called The Confessions: A Journey to Acceptance.
Yeah. And so yeah, so in a way I'm not hiding from the pain as much, but I'm also exploring it in a healthier way because I'm being open to it. I think having had children, I know I'm sort of bang on about them a lot, but they are like, me, they are the most extraordinary, amazing thing. And I think to be able to be present with them and to experience the absolute joy that they give, I have to feel the other stuff as well. Like my emotions have to be open to all of it.
What does that feel?
It feels like a relief in a way. I think they've felt bundled in and held in for so long. And sometimes it feels overwhelming. And then I talk to my partner and I go, I feel overwhelmed. And I guess we have a very special relationship in that he also lost his dad when he was 10, not to suicide, but we have this real, we have a connection, and we take care of each other in our pain that is shared and that is in it, you know, unique, but also in some ways the same.
Can I ask what prompted you to write the book in
I
the
think
first place?
I just wanted to, well, one, I think it's quite an interesting story, but I also think I just wanted it out, and out of me physically in a way. I think it's been held in as a secret for so long, and even if people maybe knew about the suicide, then they didn't know about the confession, and it was almost like an exorcism almost. I just wanted it out, and actually it's been really really good for me to be able to be my authentic self now completely, and to not have to hide bits of myself anymore, and to get to a point where I go, I'm okay.
You found it easier now to feel vulnerable?
Yeah. In fact, funnily enough, I feel less vulnerable, because I'm not hiding anything anymore.
Do your children, particularly not only the 12-year-old but the twins, did they ask about, or have they read your book?
So my oldest daughter's read it, and she just says, you know, I'm really proud of you, Mum. And they see sometimes when it's hard, or I'm just quite honest about it. But also, you know, the really sad thing is, so the 12-year-old, there was a suicide in her school. You know, this is not something that I can shield them from, and it's not something I necessarily want them to shield them from, because it's out there and they're going to be touched by it, and also they're maybe going to have their own struggles as well, and I'd rather that they learn a dialogue around that.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
and I guess the other sort of, you know, you say, why did you write the book? I also really have come to a point of peace. We've sort of focused on the hurt locker, but I trained as a yoga teacher. I do a lot of yoga, and
You're smiling there.
It's I feel really strong and really happy and really, you know, I think I lead quite a simple life, as much as you can with 3 kids, but yeah, I feel really okay most of the time, and when I don't, I know what to do.
Okay. This is probably an unfair question, and you'll probably know the answer anyway, but only one person you can choose. Who's the most important person in your life?
Well, you see, this is when it's going to come back to bite you, that I've listened to lots of your...
And you know that. Why do you think I paused then?
So I know what the right answer is.
But honestly,
if before, I would always say my kids. I would always say my kids, and to say myself feels awkward.
Why?
Because I know I'm important, but they're more important. Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
Can you
I know
embrace
I
it?
am. So,
Can
sorry,
you
say again.
embrace you being the most important person in your life? Oh.
I can accept it. I'm going to be dramatic. Yeah.
So many questions, but you've covered so much here. Tell me what therapy did for you.
It really helped me to understand myself and the way that I responded to the situation I was in. And so I felt a lot more... I think there's 2 things. I think therapy gave me an understanding, and I think it was a safe space in which to sort of revisit everything, and also to revisit the things that I disassociated from. So it was a safe space to really just go back over all of it. But I struggled with the therapy to change my response. And that's when yoga came in. So yoga helped me to change my response and my behavior, and to find self-compassion.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that, do you like yourself?
I'm all right.
I'm all right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we always sort of pick at ourselves, but yeah, I'm okay. I'm not perfect.
Who is? Who is?
Absolutely, absolutely, but I'm okay.
Maike Mullenders, author of The Confession, A Journey to Acceptance. You've been a great host, but I've just been reminded by Tim to talk about SOBS. You just kicked my butt now, so
Yes, though I just wanted to say that I'm a volunteer for survivors of bereavement by suicide, and they are a fantastic national charity. And if you have been bereaved by suicide, it's a very safe space to go and be with other people who have experienced that same loss. And I guess it's not going to be for everybody, but I definitely think it's worth giving it a try. Just
how long have you been a volunteer for? Sorry.
for about 5 years, so since before COVID. Yeah, it's 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 brilliant being a volunteer. You just get so much back. I learn stuff every time I go, and there's something about being with people who you don't need to explain your
Absolutely.
experience to. Yeah.
And everybody's experience is unique in that sense. I'm just going to mention their telephone number. SOBS' telephone number is 0300 111 5065, and they're open as a helpline 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Or you can visit their website, which is uksobs.com. And we'll put that in our feeds that we send out as well. Can I ask, what's the plan for you for the future? More yoga?
I don't know. So
Isn't that
I think
exciting?
yeah, it is. It is. Life is going to change dramatically in September because, all being well, the older two are going to go to university. So that in itself is going to be a massive shift.
You're gonna have to deal with nesting then, aren't you? Empty nesting.
I'm already feeling it. I'm already feeling it. Yeah, so that's going to be a huge shift for us as a family. But yeah, I'm really enjoying teaching yoga. I'm enjoying writing. I'm always open to these kind of conversations. I was toying with the idea of a second book. How
You've read my mind.
Yeah, it's harder than I thought. I'm really interested in the idea about how you parent when you've experienced trauma.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
yeah. Because I just know that there's a lot in there. But if anyone's got any ideas what the future should hold, or any I've worked for charities as an advocate and as a support worker in the past, but yeah, I don't know is the truth, but it's exciting, and it's all out there to be gone and grabbed.
Well, we'll put your website and socials in the episode notes as well. And there's another string to your bow, into not only being an author, but an artistic performance with dance. Yes.
Yeah, long time ago though.
Nice. That's still another string to the bow, as it were.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, if I might still do a bit of acting at some point. I really don't know. I really don't know. But I'm at a point where I'm not gonna put pressure on myself. I'll see how it goes. And at the moment, just being able to give other people the sense of calm and the sense of peace and the joy of feeling comfortable in their own bodies by teaching yoga is a fabulous thing.
And long may it continue.
Yeah.
Maike Mullenders, thank you for being on The Hurt Locker.
Thank you for having me. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. And that's a wrap, Tim.
Thank you for watching. Remember, you are not alone. If you or someone you care about is struggling with their mental health, please see the contact information in this episode's description for further support.